Hey everyone, my name's Peter and welcome to my latest FPL video. In this one, I'm going to review all the key talking points from Game Week 11 and look ahead to how that affects Game Week 12. As always, please hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. So, team news was one of the main things of interest in the 1-1 draw between Chelsea and Arsenal. Cole Palmer was fit and ready to go from the off for Chelsea, and Martin Ødegaard was back for Arsenal. Both played the full 90 minutes, but it was Ødegaard who had the biggest influence of the two, with a lovely ball to Martinelli to open the scoring for Arsenal. Pedro Neto was chief creator for Chelsea, above Palmer this week, but when nobody managed to finish any of the chances he set up, he had a go himself, letting fly into the bottom corner from 20 yards for Chelsea's equaliser. Having played the full 90 minutes in Chelsea's last 3 matches, with a goal and an assist in that time, he's looking a bit of a bargain at only 6.2 million ahead of the great fixture on Chelsea are about to embark on. The next 11 matches are fantastic from an attacking point of view, and trebling up on the Chelsea attack does not seem like a bad move at all. Palmer, Jackson and Neto could all be great assets in our FPL team. It wasn't Palmer's day-to-day though. He and Saka, the key attackers in FPL, were barely involved in their team's attacking chances, and neither side created that much during the game. Saka also went off 10 minutes before the end with a small knock, but we've seen that so many times before, and I'm confident he'll be fine for Game Week 12. Chelsea's defence at least looks a little stronger than it has recently, but against Arsenal they were set up to be more difficult to break down, and not on full-out attack mode like we have been seeing for much of this season. Good defensive performances have been rare for them this year, and I can't see many clean sheets ahead despite the easier fixtures. My investment this week, and I'm looking at bringing in at least 2 of their players, will be focused on their midfield and forwards. Palmer for sure, plus Jackson and or Neto. Arsenal have some good fixtures ahead too, especially in terms of their defence in my opinion. Even against Chelsea, they look decent again at the back, with only that wonderful strike from Neto beating Raya. Look out for clean sheets aplenty coming soon. A home to Forest in week 13 feels like the first of many. I bought in Raya and Saliba on wildcard last week, and I'm disappointed I wasn't able to afford Gabriel as well. Get their defensive players into your team for this run if you can. The only change for Brighton against Manchester City was Seaman Adingra in for Ferdi Kadioglu, who is missing due to an unreported toe injury. João Pedro and Matt O'Reilly were both back on the bench after recovering from injury, and it was those subs, along with Carlos Baleba, that made the difference for Brighton. And off for Manchester City brought in Kyle Walker as their only change, with Gvardiol moving to centre-back and Lewis starting again at left-back. Simpson Pusi started his first league game, but he's not going to get a look in once all City's first-team centre-backs are back available again. Diaz and Stones are currently injured, and Aki and Akanji were only fit enough for the bench, but they should be ready to start in Game Week 12. And City played like the dominant team we are familiar with in the first 45 minutes. They deservedly led through Haaland's 11th goal of the season at half-time. He looked far more aggressive and sharp than we have been seeing recently, showing real determination to get his goal and looking continually threatening. His aggression did lead to him getting a booking and losing 2 bonus points near the end of the game, which is once again unlucky for owners. It feels like I'm on repeat saying that, as his points returns have felt unfortunate for the last 6 weeks running now. Coming up next, Spurs at home in week 12 isn't a bad fixture for Haaland, even though they've looked defensively decent this year. But Liverpool and Forest in the following 2 weeks are among the toughest defences to break down. Moving him out to provide funds for the premium midfielders, especially Palmer and Salah, still feels like the move to make at this time. Even if your squad value is so good you can afford all 3, I prefer spreading the funds around at this point, especially into the Arsenal back line. Back to the match itself. Brighton are the only team in the league who haven't lost a game after conceding first this season, and they showed exactly why that's the case, with a much more aggressive display in the second half. The introduction of Baleba at half-time plus O'Reilly and Pedro shortly after sparked that recovery, with both Pedro and O'Reilly getting on the score sheet. Pedro may have wasted one great chance soon after he came on, but he showed real tenacity and determination a few minutes later to get the ball into the back of the net. You could see he was delighted to be back on the pitch. He also got the assist for O'Reilly's first goal for Brighton. Brighton's lovely fixture run starts this week away at Bournemouth and gets really good in Game Week 13 at home to Southampton. I feel like both Pedro and O'Reilly will become regular starters for this Brighton team within a couple of weeks. Pedro probably in the number 10 role, but possibly the number 9, and O'Reilly as the more attacking of Brighton's central midfielders. For me, that makes Pedro only 5.4 million a particularly great option, but O'Reilly at 5.5 could also be splendid value. Both really worth looking at, especially if you're on a Game Week 12 wildcard. As for City, they showed the same fragility in defence as they have done in recent weeks to help Brighton in their comeback. Conceding 2.29 expected goals this week after 2.04 last week away at Bournemouth is a sign that they're really missing Rodri at the moment, and they're particularly struggling when teams break against them. They've looked tired in the second half of games recently too, and with Spurs, Liverpool and Forest up next, all teams who are fantastic on the transition, I'm not confident about City's defence's numbers improving anytime soon. I'm glad to have moved Rico Lewis on last week, and think the highly owned Gvardiol isn't going to have the greatest time of it in the next few fixtures. City will be glad it's the international break now, and will hope to have a few more players back in a couple of weeks to help them out. After City's defeat, Liverpool had the chance to extend their lead at the top of the table to 5 points. Diaz and Robertson came into the starting lineup for Gakpo and Tsimikas, and with so much rotation going on in these positions recently, it's hard to trust any of them in your FPL team. Núñez started up front again, but we saw how good Diaz was in the centre-forward position in the Champions League in midweek with a hat-trick, so it wouldn't surprise me to see him and Gakpo play in the league together at some point with Núñez benched. Of the three, I still think Diaz is the most explosive option and the best for potential attacking returns, but right now, Salah is dominating them all and totally justifying his premium price tag. He got another goal, tucked away with huge confidence, and an assist for Núñez's lovely finish. Both were swift counter-attacks, massively exploiting Villa's lack of pace on the break. Villa looked hugely vulnerable straight after conceding possession from their own set pieces, and Liverpool could have scored more than twice this way. In fact, Villa's defence, which had been looking good this season, really struggled against both Spurs and Liverpool in the last two games. Spurs put 4 past them, and Liverpool could easily have done the same. Now, Spurs and Liverpool are both really good attacking teams, but the lack of ability to cope on the counter-attack is pretty worrying for Villa going forward. I'm sure a lot of teams will try to exploit that weakness. One positive note for Villa and FPL managers is Luca Digne. Despite signing Maatsen this summer, Digne has the left-back position nailed as his own, and he looks very creative there. He's taken plenty of set pieces, and his expected goal involvement today was 0.38, which is a stunning figure against a tough Liverpool defence. With a decent next 5 fixtures, he's by no means a bad shout, particularly if you're wildcarding this week. Up front for Villa, Watkins is having a bit of a dry spell, with only 1 goal in 5 games. The next 5 decent fixtures apply to him in the same way though, and if I was an owner, I wouldn't be particularly looking to move him on. One player we do have to worry about from this game though is Trent Alexander-Arnold. He went off before the half-hour mark with what appeared to be at first a hamstring injury. If that's the case, there's a definite chance he could be out for a few weeks, maybe longer, and we would need to be transferred out. Being the international break, we've got a couple of weeks to find out the state of that injury though, so I wouldn't rush to move him on. We'll probably get some useful information in that time, and then decide whether it's a transfer we need to make or not. Bournemouth started the match away at Brentford by far the brighter of the two teams. Semenyo, as always of late, looked threatening from the right wing, but they missed their good early chances, only for Evan Nielsen to be presented with a glorious one after a shocking back pass from Van den Berg on 17 minutes, which he happily tucked away. Brentford hit back through a well-placed header from Johan Wissa, who is in the middle of a purple patch of form since returning from injury. He also got Brentford's second later in the game, and if it wasn't for the fact that Brentford's great fixtures end in 2 weeks, I'd really like him as an option. But looking swiftly, we can see their run of fixtures is really poor from game week 14 until 22. It starts pretty hard, and then just gets more difficult the further we look. Bringing Wissa in just feels too short-term with that in mind, even though he'll probably do well in the next 2 games. Brentford ended up with a 3-2 win in this match, but they were by no means their best team. Bournemouth racked up 2.60 expected goals to Brentford's 1.54. They had more clear-cut chances and more efforts on goal, but they failed to hit the target more often than not, and that cost them in the end. Neither team looked good defensively though, but for Brentford this has been a problem all season. Only the 3 promoted teams, plus Wolves, have worse expected goals against stats this season now, and that's despite Brentford having a nice run of fixtures recently. Mark Flecken in goal, and any of their defenders definitely need to be avoided. Back in attack, and Burma got an assist for his many owners, and if you have him or Wissa, you should be very happy to keep them for the next 2 fixtures. After that, with the fixture swing ahead, I'd recommend looking to move both of them on as soon as the opportunity arises to do so. Wolves lined up with Strand Larsen and Cunha up front as expected, but of the two, it was Cunha who every manager that invested in the Wolves attack wished they'd gone for. A goal, an assist and 3 bonus points gave him a lovely double-digit return, as Strand Larsen was taken off early with a 2-pointer. To be fair, Cunha was brilliant in this game. We know he is the more creative player of the two, with Strand Larsen perhaps being the more natural finisher, but an early through ball for Sarabia to sack away and a 25-yard rocket in the second half was him right at the top of his game. Great decision for those who transferred him in recently. The fact that Cunha amassed all the points this week doesn't change my opinion that they're both good FPL options though. I wouldn't be rushing to switch, and as a Strand Larsen owner myself, I won't be changing to Cunha. After João Pedro's splendid performance off the bench against City though, I might consider bringing him in for Strand Larsen in game week 13. But that's nothing against Strand Larsen, it's just that João Pedro could be even better value. Ike Nori was the other well-owned player to feature in this game. He didn't manage any attacking returns, although he was very close to another assist in the last minute, but Wolves did manage to keep their first clean sheet of the season. That was perhaps a little fortuitous after Southampton had a goal ruled out for a very debatable foul on Semedo. His 6 points was a delight for owners like me in the end though. I can't say I thought Wolves looked good at the back, but there's no doubt Southampton looked poor going forwards. I still think that Wolves will find clean sheets hard to come by on the whole. I just want to make a little addition about Wolves here, as Gary O'Neill gave us a little bit of potentially helpful information at the end of the game in his post-match interview. He told us that Jose Sarr has reclaimed the number 1 spot in goal from Sam Johnston, so if anyone is considering bringing in a Wolves keeper, then he's the one to go for. It is not something I'm looking to do, but at 4.3 million and with 6 good fixtures now, he could be a good backup option, especially if you're on a game week 12 wildcard. Despite creating only 0.7 expected goals, Man United finished comfortable winners at home to Leicester with a 3-0 victory. After underperforming his expected stats all season, Bruno Fernandes completely rebalanced things with a goal and 2 assists from only 0.41 expected goal involvements. It's a great 17 points, but an astonishing return from that little. I feel lucky to have done that well, despite raving about him in the build-up to game week 11. Now, everyone is looking to jump on him ahead of Ipswich away in game week 12, and it's a great fixture, so I see the appeal, but United only have 2 good matches in Ipswich and Everton before the really tough ones start. It's Arsenal away, followed by Forest at home, and then City away from game week 14 to 16. If you really want to get him in this week, knowing it's only for 2 fixtures, that's okay, but I can't recommend him for that shorter time. I think he could get a couple of returns in the next 2 games, but I'm not sure that's enough to justify the transfer, unless maybe you've got 4 or 5 free ones stored up to use. If not, I'd look to target teams with a better long-term run, like Chelsea and Brighton. Ruben Amorim will be in place for game week 12 too, which could prove risky in terms of starts for many of United's other options. Less worth a gamble on now than before the match at home to Leicester before he took charge. It's not like I think he'll change everything straight away, so if you own any other United players, I'd keep hold and hope they get the start against Ipswich, but I definitely wouldn't invest in anyone else this week. Christian Romero was fit enough to start for Spurs at home to Ipswich, which should have made them stronger defensively, but that turned out not to be the case at all. Son, Solanke and Johnson got the front 3 positions, which is exactly what their owners were hoping for against an Ipswich defence that's really struggled this season. But the expected flurry of goals never came, at least not for Spurs. It was Ipswich who raced into a 2-0 lead at half-time, with Spurs looking lacklustre and being completely outrun and outworked. They showed a massive improvement in the second half though, but despite plenty of chances, a sole Rodrigo Bentancur goal was all they managed, and Ipswich got their first win of the season. Massive disappointment for all those with Spurs assets, especially those who captain Son or Solanke like myself. Now Spurs have been inconsistent this season, but it really has been their away form that's been the problem. 4 wins at home, scoring 15 goals, and only 1 defeat, which was at home to Arsenal in the previous matches, suggested an easy home win was likely, so don't be too hard on yourself if you back Spurs players to do well. Newcastle went to Forest on the back of a superb 1-0 victory over Arsenal in week 10, and with Alexander Isak looking sharp again too after scoring in both his previous 2 matches. Although Forest took the lead with their first effort of the game, it was Newcastle who were on top throughout and ran out worthy 3-1 winners. Isak scored another goal and got an assist, and with a superb run of fixtures ahead, is now looking a great option up front. That run continues all the way until game week 24, with Liverpool being the only game against the current top 6 side. If you want to wait until 15 or 16 to bring him in, I understand that, especially if transfers for Chelsea and Brighton players take precedence in the next 2 weeks. But I'd really want him by the time he plays Leicester at home in game week 16. He's a top priority transfer at that point, along with Anthony Gordon. Now, Gordon did actually go off today with a bit of a knock, but it didn't look significant. As always, I definitely wait for news regarding his injury before bringing him in, but I suspect he'll be absolutely fine. Now, Newcastle's defence has also looked much tighter over recent weeks, and with Lewis Hall at 4.3 million having nailed down the left-back spot now, I'd really look at him as the budget defender of choice to own. Regarding Forest, this was their first match in their tricky run of fixtures, and so it proved. They are a good side, especially in defence, but I don't really see more than a couple of good fixtures in a row now until game week 29. That's a long way off, but I can't see myself going for any of their players again until that point. Fulham started the game strongly against a depleted Palace team who were especially weak in central midfield, where club captain and centre-back Mark Gay was played alongside debutant Justin Devaney. Palace were always going to find this match tricky and relied on some great early saves from Dean Henderson, but he could do nothing to stop Emile Smith-Rowe scoring just before the break after a terrible pass from Maxence Lacroix, who had been looking good in a Palace shirt until that point after signing in the summer. Palace might have equalised early in the second half, but Fulham were the better team, and after Kamada's red card, Fulham hit them on the break with another goal from Harry Wilson, who's now got 3 goals in about 25 minutes of football over the last 2 game weeks. I'd never encourage anyone to buy a player who barely gets any minutes though, and I feel the same about Wilson, despite his recent goal-scoring prowess. If he can fight his way into Fulham's starting 11, then maybe it's a different conversation. Fulham do look very strong this season. The short-term fixtures don't encourage me to invest, but come game week 17, they start on another good run. I think we should be looking at Anthony Robinson, who got a clean sheet and at 4.7 million is a super option at the back, plus Emile Smith-Rowe and Raul Jimenez, who are both having a great season in front of goal. As for Palace, they have too many injuries and not enough decent fixtures to consider anyone at this time. West Ham and Everton played at a 0-0 draw. That's probably not particularly surprising, as Everton really struggled to score and they've been tightening up at the back recently. West Ham aren't a great defence, but that doesn't matter too much against Everton. They carry a bit of threat going forward, but Pickford had a good game and dealt with everything his defence couldn't cut out. To be honest, there's nobody in either team I can really recommend transferring in at the moment. Everton's best fixtures have recently finished, and West Ham's aren't good enough to want to invest in their attack at all. Their defence will probably be a no-go area all season the way they're defending too. That's all for now. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, please hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and see you for the next one.